And Agile allows us the opportunity for that to occur. And we should feel, welcoming of those new and changing requirements, not discouraged by, gee, we just got to a static or steady state, and now we have something new we have to react to. Third principle that really stands out to us is the idea that we want to deliver results frequently, often in what is termed in Agile language, sprints. And we'll talk a lot more about sprints as we go forward, but the idea is let's not wait many months before we can deliver something, but let's figure out how we can organize the work to be done in short, intense work packets or work efforts called sprints so we can generate and realize some results. Next principle is the idea that the most efficient and effective method of conveying information is face-to-face. Now, in our technology-enabled world, there's a real desire to communicate, interact, solve problems, share information, so forth, technologically, on the phone, through FaceTime, Skype, other kinds of virtual settings. And while those are all very effective and have their place, one of the base principles of Agile is face-to-face is one of the most efficient and effective ways of doing it. And then lastly is this idea of simplicity. We tend to overcomplicate a lot of things in our organizations, not just the way we design software, but the way we design products, the way we transform organizations and conduct any number of activities. We have lots of great ideas, and sometimes we overcomplicate. And one of the basic principles of Agile is simplicity. Let's figure out what we can take out, what we can do later, and so forth, so that we can get real results quickly to our customers, and we can always work in a continuous manner to continue to improve the value that is created. Now, those are sort of the base principles upon which our discussion is going to be founded today. Now, what we'd like to do, Doug and I would like to share some comments that we hear when organizations are doing the process of organization design in an Agile way. Now, some of these are comments you might hear for a lot of things, but we know organization design is happening in an Agile way when we hear people say things like, the way we do organization design here is faster and more pragmatic than what I've experienced elsewhere. Secondly, you might hear something like, I can see the full organization transformation might take a while, but I feel like after each design session, we might call that a sprint, we've made noticeable progress. I can feel it, it's tangible. Third, you might hear something like, the design facilitators that help us through this process really facilitate an experience that best uncovers insights and aligns our teams and leadership's thinking. And it really helps us confidently drive forward with our transformation objectives. And the fourth thing is, we sometimes hear, I've learned a whole new way to work and engage with my colleagues in designing and aligning my organization. And then lastly, Agile design is a contrast from what we're used to. It's an engaging, practical way of getting things done quickly and innovatively. Now, I'm going to ask for a little self-reflection for those on the line today. If you have not in your organization heard leaders, practitioners, HR professionals say these kinds of things about organization design efforts, I'm not going to state the judgment that they haven't been effective, but I would say they may not be taking full advantage of Agile organization design principles. And if you do have people who are saying these kinds of things, then you can rest assured that your organization design process is trying or striving to follow and adhere to Agile org design principles. So that's sort of the setup and the framework we wanted to establish. Now, there are some very tangible things that leaders, executives, and also practitioners can do in their organizations day in and day out that will help make organization design efforts more agile. And we want to focus the rest of our discussion really on these three sort of keys to designing an organization in a more agile way. we think these are very actionable, but they are based on those Agile principles that we covered just a couple of minutes ago. And they should give us a real insight into how we can do organization design in a different, more Agile way. First principle that we'll highlight is that small bursts of innovation, creativity, and work accelerate the pace of progress. So that's the first principle key we're going to cover. The second one is co-creation leads to the best thinking and insights. And then the third one is organization design is an iterative process, and it is ongoing. You could argue it never ends. Now that might be scary to some people because they certainly want organization design or transformation efforts to end so they can get back to their real work. But we'll talk in a little bit about why it's important that organization design efforts, just like Agile development, is something that is iterative and ongoing. So those are sort of the three keys that we want to cover today, and we're going to dive into each of those.
So Reed, let me make a quick comment.
Of course.
So one of the things that goes along with these key elements is a lot of organizations want to get into more of a test and learn environment. And I think that also goes with one of these principles. And so I've had some clients to say, you know, we're doing this design, and as we're going through this, can we go back and start trying out some of this stuff? And I say, you know, absolutely. Go see if this seems to work. If you've got some change or a little tweak that you just want to test because you don't know it'll work in this culture, don't wait for weeks or months to go test it. Do it right away. Come back, provide some feedback, and say, do we need to pivot here, or does this work, and we can keep moving forward. So that's another way to create sort of this test and learn environment to keep us focused and moving without having to wait to the end.
Thank you, Doug. Great application. I appreciate that. Yeah, we've worked with many organizations that have tried to adopt that practice, and as common sense as it is, it's actually hard to pull off because there's sometimes so many moving pieces in an organization that have to be coordinated. It's actually hard to try stuff without sort of getting everything lined up. So really appreciate you calling that out and thinking about how can we drive good test and learn as we go forward. Now, the first key that we want to get into is this idea that small bursts of innovation, creativity, and work accelerate the pace of progress. Now, to kind of set the stage for this key, you know, there's a funny picture here of it looks like a gentleman trying to push a boat off the shore here and get it moving forward. But what struck me about this picture as it pertained to this insight about Agile organization design was the idea that the propulsion, moving the boat at this stage, was not coming directly out of the back of the boat. There's something up there near the bow of the boat that's allowing the boat to actually move sideways. And probably doesn't move particularly fast. It's probably meant to be sort of a controlled, slow, gradual, you know, movement. But nonetheless, there's something that allows the boat to move laterally away from the shore before it probably engages its main thrust to move in a forward or backward direction. And what really stood out to me about this, of course, is the idea that this little burst from this small propulsion at the front of the boat is what's going to get that boat started and get it doing something productive and making progress. And so I use that as a bit of an analogy to kind of help us visualize and get an image in our minds of what a small burst of innovation, creativity, or work could do to help us start making progress. Now, when we think about organization transformation, Doug and I want to share with you the way we start to think about this. Now, when you look at it, if you're really an Agile adherent, you'll say, gee, that looks like a waterfall. And that's, you know, sort of exactly what Agile software development is working against, is more waterfall software development. But let me show kind of how this isn't waterfall in a sense. The first step in transformation is, of course, to understand what your organization is capable of doing and producing. And so there's a diagnostic step. And from there, you start to do some planning so that you can do what we, in our language, call the macro alignment of the organization. Are we set up at the most strategic level to enable and deliver our strategy, the way we want to win, and the way our resources should best be aligned and configured to drive that winning strategy? Then, of course, there's another step that goes into planning for more detailed operational level design work, which we call micro design, which really helps us redesign processes, jobs, incentives, KPIs, and even aspects of culture. And then from there, after we've been doing this architecting, then there really is a deployment and rollout effort. Now, it's awkward when we draw it this way, and it does indeed look waterfall, to say that the realization and sustainability happens after we've done all of this work up in on the drawing board. But the reality is, if you're doing organization design in an agile way, and if you're following the principle Doug shared around implementing test and learns, you actually are trying out your strategy, your macro design, your micro design on a continual basis to the point where you can then at some point really deploy this at scale in the organization.